Hi, welcome to the Mindset Junkie podcast. I am your host, Seamus Fox. I created this podcast to inspire people like you, people who want to create change in their lives but possibly feel stuck. I love speaking with guests from all over the world who have created change in their own mindsets so that they can be the best and the highest version of themselves. They have greater impact on this world. So, strap yourself in and enjoy the Mindset Junkie journey. Hi guys, welcome back to the Mindset Junkie podcast. So, today's guest is David Foster. David, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for the invite, Shem. It's good to be here.
Looking forward to chatting, David. What I'd like to do for the listeners, if you can give people a description of who you are, where you're from, what you're involved in.
Yeah, so I'm a dad and a husband and a professional coach, and our paths have crossed because we're in similar circles of like people like Dr. John DeMartini, who did a great interview on him last week.
Yeah.
And but my background hasn't always been being a professional coach. Before that, I was an entrepreneur. I had several businesses, and I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So I'm also an author. I think you started reading my book, Where's Dad, which is one that tells a story about an overwhelmed entrepreneur who, is a bit lost and afraid, and then meets a coach.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it, really. I don't want to go on too much because it will bore the listeners, but that's a reasonable summary of this.
Yeah, but what I like to do for listeners again, and with every guest, is kind of pick it back to the start. Where did you grow up? What were those early inspirations? What was it like as a young David growing up?
Yeah, so I grew up in a quite a rural place, actually, in the east of England, in East Anglia, a place called Four Goats Tid, where there was a population of about, I think, 10 people, and four of those were called Dave or David. Right. So it's very sort of backwater near a Fenland market town called Wisbech. And yeah, childhood was it seems pretty kind of normal to me, really. Didn't really have dad around much. His dad was a very driven individual who was, looking to build a business and provide for his family, but grew up with a brother and a sister and a loving and challenging mum, as most of us have had. And then stayed around that area for a fair while, and then moved out to where I am now, which is living in Essex, to kind of create a new life and a family for myself. So,
yeah. Fantastic. So you mentioned your dad. Was he kind of one of your inspirations when you were younger, or was there sports involved, or like what was school like? Were you interested in school? Was there anything that inspired you in those younger years?
Oh yeah, dad was a huge hero of mine. I used to sit in meetings with my dad and go to, in his car to sort of see people he was selling his services to, if you like. And then people would come to our house, and dad had a little office, and I'd sit there and be fascinated with the way that he was kind of orchestrating these meetings and managing his team, and his, had a lot of trade workers, painters and decorators, and he was kind of, making sure they were looked after, and also making sure that the business was surviving. So I always had a dream of being a business owner, like my dad. Yeah. When I was young. Even started my first business at the age of I think I was 11 years old, actually, selling sweets at school. My dad had won a contract for this industrial painting job. And one of the deal breakers was, so, well, do you have a catering arm to your firm too? Because we've lost our catering contractor. And he said, yeah. And he basically went home that night and said to Mum, by the way, next week, you've got to start catering for this contract. So, oh no, it's, otherwise you're not going to get the deal. So Mum enrolled a few friends and had a job as a caterer for the duration of the contract. And she ended up getting an accountant booker, cash and carry. Yeah. And I went along with it. I was like, I can't believe this. There's all these sweets here that they're not like, they say they're a penny on the packet, but they're like 10p. I can buy 500 sweets and start a business. So I ended up doing that at school and bagging these sweets up. Even sold shares in the business, because I want to be just like Dad's. Yeah. And it went really well until I was closed down by the headmaster. He put me in charge of the yearly sort of tuck shop, if you like. So Dad was a big hero of mine, and I got into sport quite late. I loved cricket and rugby, particularly at the age of sort of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and had desires to be potentially a professional sports in either of those. Had professional trials, but didn't work out. Kind of discovered other parts of life, like women and drink and partying. And I think you've got to be very disciplined if you really want to make it. And I didn't have the discipline at that age. So,
Yeah.
but that was some sort of highlights of my younger years.
Yeah, it's funny. I was speaking to a girl last week, Granny McCoy. She's an entrepreneur and has a few businesses here and up around Belfast. And it's funny, her story was she started selling sweets and her brother started selling sweets in school, etc. It's funny how you can like kind of go back and you can see that entrepreneurial spirit from such a young age, like a willing to make money or a willing to put yourself out there. So you kind of went through school then, David, and did you just go straight into business or did you continue on into further education or what was the path?
Um, so I took a year out, a gap year, if you like, between school and university, and worked as just a factory floor hand, really, just doing anything, and then ended up becoming a junior draftsman in that business because I had an A level in like geometrical and mechanical drawing.
Yeah.
And I had agreed to go to Nottingham Trent University, to study mechanical engineering. And the reason I did that is because when I was getting careers advice, I looked at my hero, my dad, and the careers teacher, and they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I don't really know." I said, "I enjoy sport and people and this sort of stuff." And they said, "Well, son, the country will always need engineers. So why don't you be an engineer?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, what do I need to do? We need to get maths and physics, and you can do that drawing thing you like." "Oh, okay, cool." So because my dad was a former engineer, right? So I then went to university, and I think I went to one or two lectures, I think. And I sat in these lectures and I was like, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. They could have been speaking in Swahili, right?
Yeah.
So I spent sort of the first 3 months and all the grant money I've been given, kind of getting to know Nottingham and the social scene. And I was called into the headmaster's office, the dean's office in the term. He said, "You've got the worst attendance record of any student on campus." He said, "You've got three choices. You either buck your ideas up, you either transfer to another course, or you leave." And I said, "Well, can I transfer to psychology? Because I kind of like people. And there's a guy in my dorm room who's doing psychology, and he's doing 9 hours a week versus my 30 hours a week on my schedule. And it seems, can I do that?" He said, "No, not with your background." I said, "Well, can I do criminology? Because that's kind of like interesting, and you're dealing with humans and people and characteristics." And he said, "No, I think we better draw a line on this. You better leave." Okay. So I then went back home with the tail between my legs, and did anything and everything to earn money. Started a few little sidelines, started doing live music gigs. I became a sports coach at a local school. I then went to Australia to play cricket for 6 months, semi-pro as well. So I did many, many things before then waking up at the age of kind of 21, 22, having had a mental breakdown for a good year, actually. Just felt very, very lost and very afraid and very alone, and sank into a deep, deep depression. I wouldn't go out the house, but didn't want to see people, which I think is very typical of people who are sort of that age, who are lost and confused, right? And then I was lucky enough to be offered some work by a friend of mine who was a ground worker. He said, "Come on," he said, "you need to get out of the house and just come and dig some holes and jackhammer some holes." I was like, "Okay," and it was brilliant. I loved it, right? Got me emotional. And then I was offered a job or an interview to go and work in publishers to do sales. Someone said, "Yeah, you'd be good at sales." And I got into professional publishing, and then things started to snowball from there. So.
Ah, fantastic. Is that where you kind of got into writing? Were you writing at that stage, David? Was it something that you even thought about, or was it just specifically in sales in that business?
I think looking back, I think I'd always had a secret whisper, wanting to be an author and a writer. I definitely know the last 20 years that's always been there. Even as a child, though, I'd loved writing stories, and I didn't particularly like the kind of the academic side of English. Didn't do particularly well in it, but I just loved the creative process of writing. But I think that got tamped down or tucked away over the years of being told you're not very good at English, you're not a writer, and we start to believe these stories, right? And we believe they're true, and they keep us small. So, but the publishing was it was in magazines, special interest magazines. I started working on a practical photography magazine and bird watching magazine. There is a magazine for bird watching, believe it or not. And I was like junior sales rep, so that was more the genre of that.
Yeah. What did you learn most in that position in terms of sales, like when it transfers into what you're doing right now as a coach?
Relationships. Yeah. All about relationships. So I had the good fortune of being mentored by a guy they called Silver Fox, no pun intended, James, right? And he was a wise, jolly guy called Mike Elliott, and he took me under his wing in the first week because I was a bit lost and confused. And even though the training there was brilliant in sales, he took me under his wing. And he started taking me out to these key account meetings as a junior guy, and he wouldn't do any selling or techniques. He would just talk about golf and cricket and how's the wife, and because he'd known these guys for 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And he'd come out with all these huge orders. I'm like, what is this guy doing? He said, it's all about relationships. So I've worked hard over these years to create and maintain these relationships, and there's trust there and there's safety there. So that was a huge lesson back then.
I think it's fantastic. And it is so true. And I think that it's missing a lot in maybe our industry right now, and what we do is coaching and business and how you should build your business. I think that nearly that whole thing is forgot about, like building relationships, building trust. There's so much to do with like growth, make a sale. And a lot of the times that relationship or the trust building, or like actually getting to know someone and see if you can actually help them. It's nearly like it's nearly illegal in your business and growth and what you're supposed to be doing right now.
Yeah, you're right. I think there's people are running so fast in their life and looking to get into a made up future of some connotation. Yeah. They often miss some of the great opportunities that are sitting there right beneath their nose, especially in the industry of like coaching and professional development. There's a big boom in that industry, and where with social media, everyone's kind of looking to land grab all these things they call prospects. They're actually human beings with lives and families and goals and desires. And I think you're right. I think the old ways of creating relationships are kind of starting to fizzle out. There's still some people doing it, I think.
Yeah.
But it seems to be a case of get them in, get them out. There'll always be more people to serve. Get them in, get them out, versus looking at the long term side of things. So.
Yeah, and looking at what you said, they're actual human beings with human needs and wants and problems they solve. And I picked up some of that, and we'll touch on it in the book. I picked up some of that sales process in the book, from the coaching aspect is in the book as well too. Just what you touched on there now, the relationships, which is fantastic. So from there then, David, obviously you're coaching now, and you've went on to work with and coach other coaches and entrepreneurs and business owners. How did you get started in that path?
So I having got into publishing, I did quite well in that quite early on. I was headhunted after a year to go and launch a magazine with the smaller publishers. Had some investment, and long story short, made rapid progress through that organization. And then in 2005, having kept continuously going to the board of directors saying, hey, I've got this idea, give me this amount of money and I'll make you all this other money, and being turned down, I said to a guy there, I said, let's just do it on our own. A business partner of mine, a future business partner. He said, what do you mean? I said, let's just go for it. So we both put our houses on the line, got a loan from the bank, built all these business plans, and we just jumped ship and entered into this world of entrepreneurship, having had, a sweet business, a few live events, those sort of things, but a real entrepreneurial streak inside both of us. And that lasted for seven and a half years. Massive success. Got to 7 figures within the first 18 months in a publishing business where it was quite depressed, and we were selling advertising and marketing campaigns, traveling the world, built a team of 20, 25 people. And then the recession came, and realized actually the tide went out and we didn't have any trunks on. We're totally exposed, totally ill-equipped to kind of run this business that we've built, by default versus design, really. Yeah. And in a lot of pain, a lot of stress, borrowing money here and trying to make ends meet, losing staff. So went through a huge amount of, real world experience there that hard to describe now, but at the time it was particularly difficult and challenging. And it's gave me loads of benefits in the future, right? And then my first son was born, and I was already unhappy and realized I've been chasing what I call conventional success without fulfillment. And he came along after my wife and I've been trying for 4 years for a child, no end of miscarriages and painful moments there too. And I held in my arms and I just went, I'm done. I'm not going to play that game anymore. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to use my experiences to help other people not make the same mistakes I'd made.
Yeah.
And so I then decided to leave that business, spent 11 months exiting that business and left with nothing in the end. And discovered this thing called coaching. I've been doing consultancy and brand strategy consultancy and business consultancy and marketing, anything to pay the bills really.
Yeah.
And or heard a book called E-Myth, what I know you're a fan of, E-Myth Revisited. And I was mowing the lawn and I was like, the tears are streaming down my face. No, why has no one ever told me about this thing called coaching? And the book really just summed up what my internal experience was of owning and starting and running a business. So I then chose to go and get a coach to sort me out, And my first session, I was like, I don't want a coach. I want to be a coach.
Yeah.
So I then chose to qualify and professionally retrain as an E-Myth business coach, and had a load of coaching from brilliant people on the way, and then did that for many, many years. And fast forward to now, so I've worked with business owners all over the world in business coaching, and then chose to get more into the life coaching space too. And then in the last few years, been working with coaches to help them really empower their own lives, and grow sustainable coaching practices that serve their life, without sacrificing balance at home. So that's kind of where I am today.
Fantastic, man. Brilliant. We'll touch on the book, because the book's fantastic for anybody that's listening. It's called Where's Dad? Connect with yourself and your family before it's too late. And we were speaking about it just before we come on, but there's so many things in that book that resonated with me as well too, obviously as a father and a coach and a business owner. And so many things that I experienced the years before and other businesses as well too, just working all the time. But there's a lot of funny things in the book as well too. But there's a point in the book at the start when you talked about the boardroom, going on the Monday morning for that boardroom meeting, and you mentioned David Brent trying to motivate the team, but you kind of had the respect, or people looked on you like maybe David Brent. But the way it was explained in the book, I actually got that feeling of being that person, being yourself, or who they're talking about in that book. That feeling of like the lack of morale, and nearly like the sense of the whole team just didn't get it, or they just didn't have the same vision or inspiration as you. Can you go through what that was like, what that experience was like, David?
Yeah, so I've been there myself, which is why I can write about it quite vividly, because it's not kind of conceptual. I've lived through it, right? And I've been sat there with no end of people around me, looking at me as a leader, and I'm thinking, am I actually speaking in the same language here?
Yeah.
And people sort of picking their nose and just looking, picking nose. You know what I mean, right? So I'm wondering what's wrong with me. What is it about me that is having this impact, this effect on these people, where they're not as engaged or inspired as I am? And I kind of realized, actually, with retrospect, what that was all about is because actually I was actually chasing something there that wasn't authentic. Actually, I was chasing kind of the building of a business for cash, and there's nothing wrong with that. Money's great, and I love money, but I think that was coming through unconsciously with the way I was leading the business, where I'd kind of say, I'm engaged, I'm inspired, but you look at me and a face tells 1,000 words. So I think people kind of picked up the vibe I was actually giving off, where I wasn't actually enjoying myself as a business owner, because I didn't really have complete clarity around who I was, what I wanted, and how I wanted to create it. And that now forms a large piece of the work that I do to start with many, many people, because I think if that bit is missing as a leader in a business, the lack of clarity, lack of vision, lack of purpose, your staff are going to express that to you. They're going to be a mirror to you and show up to the things that are actually missing in your life. So if you get that piece as a business owner, I've done this with many people over the years, and then you encourage your team to do the same, where they connect with their values and purpose and vision. And you imagine like a Venn diagram, two circles overlapping, where the business owner's needs being met and the team's needs being met. That's where the magic starts to happen, and the intrinsic inspiration starts to bubble inside people. And you have those meetings, and people they're on board. Not all the time. People are still humans; they have ups and downs emotionally. But that was the piece that was missing for me, and so it was pretty easy to write about in the book.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's so true. But why is it, do you feel, David, that it's missing in so many areas, especially in so many businesses, like coaching businesses, entrepreneurs? there's nearly like that disconnect. And I know you've obviously went on and done a lot of work with Dr. John DiMartini and went on
Yeah.
to be a facilitator and work for him as well too. And he talked about that alignment and values. Like none of that seems to get taught, and so many people are chasing this like dream or somebody else's goal, and then wondering why they're burning out. Like for people that are listening, business owners that are listening, entrepreneurs that are listening, like what would you recommend them doing if they're in that position right now where they feel that there's lack of morale, they're not actually moving forward, the team's not responding?
Honestly, I'd get a coach. I would interview some people or get referred to a few coaches through people that you trust and hang out with them for an hour or two, explain what your challenges are, and you will, you'll find someone who can guide you. I'm a massive advocate of coaching. Coaching was a catalyst that really helped transform my life.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I chose to be a coach is because when I was in deep stuff where I was stuck, I didn't even know this thing called coaching existed. I would hiring these consultants at several £1,000s a week or sometimes a day, and they would effectively, borrow my watch and tell me the time. And I'd be like, oh, I kind of knew that. And because there was loads of internal stuff inside me, the lack of clarity, the lack of really being myself, lack of authenticity, lack of engagement, that these people weren't even aware of. They just were saying, well, just do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
So I think I would say, get a coach, and don't just go for the first one you meet. Speak to a few first, and you'll intuitively know the right person to help you, because there's a lot out there, but if we want to sort of serve your needs.
Yeah. Going back to that business, David, if you could make a change in there, would you have made the change faster to get out of there faster? Like instead of spending that 7 years and getting to maybe such a low point, would you go back and go, with hindsight, I should have got out of there faster? Because a lot of people do stick around and they're trying to flog a dead horse instead of making a decision.
Yeah, I definitely lived in sort of a state of purgatory for many years, but I don't think I would change anything, because what the kind of upside of that journey was that when I was working with business owners, and still today, and they bring to me a people problem or a time problem or a money problem or a problem with their wife or their children, I don't have to kind of look at a book and go, hey, a second, give me 5 minutes. I'll just try and make some stuff up. I've lived my version of it, so I have like what I call an authentic empathy with their journey, and kind of when I help them, it's also healing a part of me back in those days. So, and I don't think I would have been as good a coach or as effective coach if I'd have just been like, just do this process and do this, and because I think people need to feel seen, heard, and understood to really let you in. And when people let you in, then you can do the deep work that's going to really make the difference in their life.
Yeah, I suppose all those experiences that you went through in business, as you said, they enable you and give you a stronger skill set to be able to coach and mentor the people that you're going through now. A lot of people, if they've just went through life and they've had it all rosy and it's been nice and plain sailing, maybe don't add value within themselves to help people through the shit times because they've never experienced it.
Yeah, dead right. I mean, I watched your brilliant TED talk this morning, and you shared some of your journey, and I imagine you've got a similar sort of thing going where, part of your journey is that allowed you to help younger versions of yourself, head things past earlier, right? So we all have it inside us things.
Yeah, 100%. So the book, David, when did you write the book, Where's Dad?
I started writing it in 2018 properly. The idea came in 2017, and then it came out in June 2020.
Okay, so the idea, what was the real kind of inspiration for it? What was it that you wanted to really get across?
So parenthood was a huge thing that changed my view of the world. Everyone says that parenthood changes you, but until you've experienced it, you don't have any idea, right? So, and as a dad, I realized that there was a moment where I knew I wanted to be a present parent and be there for my kids, and I was chasing my tail, driven, ambitious, and following a model of my dad where he wasn't really around much. Now, I love Dad deeply, and he was inspiring in so many ways, but I missed him as a kid.
Yeah.
So this idea to write a book bubbled up when I was in a coaching group in 2017 with a guy called Rich Litvin, who co-wrote The Prosperous Coach. It was a really, really good book. I recommend for any coach out there. With another guy, Steve Charlie, who I used to work with for a few years. And I just sort of spoke this idea out as in, I want to write a book. And then it started to form in that coaching group in a safe space. Ideas would flow. And I thought, what about if I wrote a book about, things that I love? So coaching and parenthood, and I was going to do a non-fiction book, but that didn't really call to me.
Mm.
So I started, well, what would be a book that I would have loved to read?
Yeah.
But the idea started to bubble up. And the aim of the book is to really help people who are feeling they're a little bit stuck in life in some respects, some way, shape, or form, to give them hope and a different and a fresh perspective on the possibilities that are actually there for all people to tap into if they slow down and just connect with themselves and their families. I think there's a lot of dads, particularly, and mums actually, if they're professional people, who move at such a pace they actually forget the beauty that lives inside that connection with the children, and they wake up when the kids are sort of 15, 20, 25 years old and go, do you know what? I wish I could buy that time back. And you can't. So I wanted people to slow down, connect with their kids, connect themselves, and actually give themselves permission to be who they really are and live a more authentic life versus just trying to, follow the patterns and habits and behaviors of what they think success should be and what it should look like.
Yeah, 100%. And there's so many things in the book, as I said, resonated. And I think that so many people do think and feel that way, which is like, I have to keep working, I have to keep chasing this dream, I have to keep chasing these goals. Because again, we're looking at the outside from what's going to be put out there in society and what we feel that we should be. And as you said, never really living as our authentic self or feeling properly aligned. And it kind of comes across in the book a lot. And I'm sure most people that are entrepreneurs and business owners listening in, as you say, men or women, will resonate, because the point that I picked up as well too was even when I was at home and I'm at home and I'm supposed to spend time with the kids, my head is elsewhere. My head is in business. My head isn't thinking about this, thinking about that. And it's so hard to be present. Do you feel that you've kind of got that switch or that balance now, David? Or what did you do to kind of get that for yourself in your own coaching practice?
That's a really, really good question. I think that's a perennial problem most ambitious people face, that kind of work-life balancing. Is it a myth? Can you have the balancing or not? And so for me, it came down to me just making a commitment to myself to practice in that area. Because for me, work is easy.
Yeah.
I could work 24 hours a day, really, but I kind of chose the responsibility to be a parent. And I wanted to make sure that I owned that 100%. And I saw a lot of myself in my kids as they were growing up. And I wanted to hang out with them and have fun with them and play with them and those sort of things. So, but that's not to say I've got it nailed. Every day is a fresh start. And every day there is some kind of question whether is now the right time to work, or is it the best time to connect with your family?
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example, right? It's only a small thing, but it's actually quite a powerful thing. So last night, my wife and I take turns to bath the boys. I've got two boys who are 10 and 7, right? Or shower the boys, whatever it is. And last night, my youngest, he said, "Are we wrestling tonight, Daddy?" Because we have a tradition of wrestling. Yeah. And the older they get, the more shit they kick out of me. And I'm getting a little bit scared, I'll be honest. And I was like, and I was tired, and there was a couple of things I wanted to do, and I said, "Not really sure." He said, "Oh, come on, Dad.
Yeah.
Don't be like that." And I was really, really tired. I don't think I slept well the night before, and had a quite an intense day with various things. And we got upstairs, and they just started beating me up, and we had just an amazing sort of 10 minutes. And I came out of that interaction with so much energy, that I could have quite easily avoided. And they got connection. We got, created some lovely, simple memories for that 10 minutes wrestle. And it could have been so easy to say, "No, just get in the shower, get washed, get done."
Yeah.
I'm not saying I always do that, right? Because I'm not perfect. No one is. Yeah. But those little micro moments make all the difference, I think. So I think if you're a business owner and you're ambitious, listening to this podcast, please don't compare, where you are with me, but look at your own life and say, well, if business is a really high value to you and money is a really high value, that's great. You don't need to be around your kids all day long, every day, because you're serving them in different ways. And that's wonderful. But, even like a 5 or 10 minute present interaction where you slow down, speak to them, ask them about their day, have a wrestle, go for a 10-minute walk, reading a book, something. Those little things, they add up over a lifetime of a child growing up. That makes all the difference. So when I talk about present parenting, I mean it's actually about being really present when
Yeah.
you're with them, and not sitting there on your phone or thinking about other stuff. And that is something that comes with practice. You're not going to get it overnight. You learn to play the piano by playing the piano. So you learn to be a present parent by practicing being a present parent in those little micro moments.
Fantastic, man. I remember being coached by a coach that I had a few years ago, and we talked about this because it was a big thing for me as well too. Just always working and like feeling that I was missing out, and everything that you mentioned in the book in terms of feeling guilty because you were doing that.
Yeah.
He spoke to me and he said like, well, what do you think that your kids want? And I says, no, quality time. He says, no, it's not quality time. They just want time. Like it doesn't have to be quality time. It's just that space, as you said, just connecting, going up and resting, and having that wee bit of time. And sometimes we do. And as you said, if we value business and entrepreneurship and making money and all that, that's fantastic as well too. But it's important not to like miss out on that journey because you don't get that back.
You don't, and also I think it's important to be open and honest with your kids. So my boys will come down. I get 5:30 every day. I'm doing an hour and a half of my own work and creative stuff in the mornings when the house is quiet.
Yeah.
That's how I've chosen to plan my life out, because especially with lockdown, right, at the moment when this is being recorded. And they'll sometimes come in, and I'll say, not now's not a good time. And they say, what are you doing? I said, well, let me show you what I'm doing. This is Daddy's business. I write this, and this is what it does, and then I do this, and I help people with their lives and their businesses, or and I explain to them. I say, I love it.
Yeah.
I love this work. It's really important to do something you love with your life.
Yeah.
So I'm not hiding the fact that I'm a business owner, and I explain that when the money comes in, this is where it goes, and this is how it helps the family. And so they're not kind of growing up in a house where they think that Daddy's ignoring them because they don't like them.
Yeah.
They're saying, oh, this is what real life looks like. I'm trying to give them a healthy relationship to them.
Yeah, it's so important. And at the end of the day, that's the lessons that you learned as well too, albeit a wee bit different, but you learned those foundations at the start to build a business from your father and being around your father.
Yeah, exactly. To be able to be independent, or it's okay to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Most people live their lives, fearful of ever stepping outside their comfort zone and sort of go to be an employee, which is fine.
Yeah.
But having a model like that, that's a huge benefit, really.
Yeah. I think being open like that, just as you said, being open with your kids. Like I was sitting watching the TED Talk went live last night, and I was watching it, and I know like the part of the story, and actually it was my daughter actually come up with a name for the book. So even watching it, because she was there, I paused it, and I didn't want to watch it in front of her, but she'd already watched it live with my wife when it went live because it was a live stream. So she knows the whole journey, and she knows, and she's 11, and she's well switched on. But sometimes I think that it's good to be open and honest and show those paths and show the mistakes, because like you're already like giving your kids like valuable lessons at that point, instead of trying to hide everything and make sure and making
you are
out that everything's fine.
Exactly. And if one thing I do is I relate to their life. So you know how you love playing your Nintendo Switch for an hour on Saturday or Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love writing, or I love coaching. Oh, do you? Yeah. So same. So if I say no to you to play because I'm doing this, not because I don't love you, because I really love this. If I come and try and interrupt you when you're playing a Switch, you don't want to hang out with me. And they go, no, you're right though. So they, with their level of consciousness, they get it and relate to their own lives, what I'm doing. So they don't take it personally, right? And they're also getting a taste of what it is to be, an adult when they get older. So
100%. There's a part in the book, David, and I spoke to you about it just before we come on as well too. That journey between the father and the author, or the guy in the book, Peter. Or not Peter. Peter was Ben. Yeah, Ben and his father. The relationship between Ben and his father, and his father was the entrepreneur, the business owner, the go-getter, and Ben always felt that he kind of had to live up to that person. And then before he went to hire the coach asked him to go and speak to his father and just be open and honest about it. And that chapter, as I said to you last night, it was kind of, the emotion came across, and when I was reading it, I felt like I actually felt the emotion in the words that came across in the pages in the chapter, where the expectation that he was living under wasn't what his father expected at all. Mm-hmm. And it went on for years before he had that conversation. Do you want to kind of give people a description of like where it is or what it is that you're writing about there, David?
Yeah, so essentially it was there's a phrase, I can't swear on this. I think I've already said shit. Can I swear some more? Is that okay? Assumption is the mother of all fuck ups, right? So that part in the book speaks to that, because the character Ben has been living around inside a story that feels really real, like reality,
Yeah.
that actually, in order for him to be seen and loved and noticed by his dad, he's got to be an entrepreneur. And his dad's been sort of just happily living his life and following his own values and his highest priorities, those sort of things. And over the years, this story that Ben's built up has got bigger and bigger and bigger. And whenever Ben and his dad connect, that, if you imagine, that sits in the space like a cardboard cutout between the two of them. And they don't really have authentic heart-to-heart conversations. And this happens with everyone. We run around with all these preconceptions and stories about how people are, and well, they did that to me, and this, and that. And actually, if you slow down and really connect with someone and actually bring up some authenticity, you realize that actually we're making a whole lot of assumptions, right? So the story, it shows that, and Ben actually builds up the courage through the encouragement of his coach to bring a new level of authenticity to his dad. And it helps them come much closer in the relationship, because that story that he'd been running for all these years was actually just not true.
Yeah.
And once that was popped, that bubble was popped, it allowed them to clear the space between them and actually have more of an authentic relationship.
Yeah, it was fantastic the way it came across. It was the way it was wrote, in terms of how the father kind of like took a step back and just went silent. And because in the book, the image of the father, let's say, is this kind of hard-nosed entrepreneur, go-getter, just always, as you mentioned in the book, putting the nose to the grindstone, always working. And then you get a completely different side to who that person actually is, because of a what? Because of a conversation, because of a question, because of actually
Exactly.
up a certain subject. And that's so common in people's relationships with their own father, or people's relationships with their parent or their spouses or whatever. Like, never actually approaching the conversation and getting your word across properly and getting a completely different perspective on what the situation is in terms of how you're thinking about it.
Yeah. The cave you fear to enter is where the treasure lies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's I think that's so true in any relationship, really. And I think it's such an important thing. And your listeners might be listening to it and seeing themselves in kind of Ben's dad, always knows the grindstone and working and hustling, those sort of things. There's nothing wrong with that, because my heart goes out to dads and professional women, because there's a lot of responsibility if you're the leader of a family and you're the main breadwinner. But actually, it can be a lot of fear that creeps. If you don't keep going, you're going to damage your relationship and the lifestyle you've got and your children, those sort of things. So it's a really difficult thing, I think, to sort of kind of get that balancing down, because there's a fear of missing out and not doing enough, right?
Yeah, 100%. So fast forward to kind of now, David, what is it that you're involved in now? How are things for you? Like, how's the last year been for you in your own coaching space, in your own business? How have you dealt with COVID? Like, what have you learned most about yourself, I suppose, over the last 18 months, 12 months that we've been in lockdown?
Yeah. So lockdown's been very good for business, which people may not want to hear if they've got a bricks and mortar business, but I've been coaching online for almost a decade now.
Yeah.
So, audio calls or GoToMeeting or Skype or Zoom these days, those sort of things. So it didn't really shift for me. I made more of an intentional pivot to want to work with coaches, because not that I don't love working with business owners. I still have a handful of those clients, but my heart goes out to coaches who are brilliant coaches who have kind of realize that their purpose is to help other people, but they don't know how to build a sustainable business around it. So I now have groups where I coach coaches to do just that without messing up at home. So without sacrificing balance. That's a big part of life for me. And that's something I love to do. And I'm also writing the second book, which is I'm not going to give the title just yet because I'm working on it, but it's going to be a fictional tale, which is going to be kind of a follow-on to a degree. So that's an exciting project as well. So the last year has been professionally been good. It's been difficult to balancing, with homeschooling, and we're not teachers of our own children, right? I think everyone's kind of learned that. So there's definitely been a lot of pressure there at home, and understanding how we can learn to kind of cohabit more often than we have done when the kids used to be at school. But there's also been upside that we've been having lots more simple connection time as a family too. Sort of more meals together, more walks together, just in the really, really simple things. So I don't see it as being a bad year. I see it as having kind of upsides and downsides the last 12 months. And you are familiar to a degree with the work of John DeMartini.
Yeah.
And, if someone's listening to this and going, "God, you've got no idea how it's been for me. It's been so crap and terrible." Those little things that happened last year, that there's going to be some gold. There's some lessons in there that may not pay back straight away. If you think about my journey, one of the things that made me such a successful coach is because I'd lived and breathed those tough times. So you'll have your version of that, even if you can't see it by now.
Yeah, and it's totally true. There is, as you said, you talk about Dr. John DeMartini. He talks about everything's in balance, like for every positive there's a negative, and it's our perception around it. And he spoke about that in the podcast 2 weeks ago, in terms of it's our perception, literally, in terms of how we actually process everything that's going on. You might see it as a phase in terms of growth and happy days. This is going to be a time that I grow in personal and business. Another person sees it completely different. Just to touch on that, what do you feel is that difference between what most people are? Do you think that it's conditioning? Do you think it's past experiences that changes someone's perception, or has a certain perception for someone, between somebody being growth-minded and stuck and not being able to see the blessings in the crisis, as John DeMartini says?
It's a really, really good question. I'll do my best to unpack it and answer it. So if you think about anything that happens in life, any events, let's take your the event you spoke about when you were 20, when you had a car crash, right?
Yeah.
Now, you're going to label that event as good or bad, but actually the event is neutral. It's a thing that occurred in life, and it had upsides and downsides. So in our life, we go through life and we have these things that we think happen to us, and we take those events and we translate those. We look at those through a filter of what our highest priorities or our values are. And then through that filter, we say, well, this thing here is supporting my values, so it's good. Or this thing here is challenging my values, so it's bad. So one of the things that can be really useful when you're looking to kind of tap into a growth mindset is to not label and judge things as being good or bad, but slow it down and actually look at, well, what's the upside in this current situation? If you're perceiving it through the filter of your values, what's most important to you as being bad, what's the upside? Where else have you been served on it in a positive sense from this event you're calling negative? And also, if you get something that you think is too good to be true, and you get kind of very emotional and elated and think this is happy days, the goose has laid the golden egg. Also, regulating yourself and actually, where's the downsides in this potentially? To try and keep yourself on an emotional kind of balanced level state versus being too above the line or below the line emotionally. And if you can get that place of self-regulation, that allows you to tap into more of a growth-minded mindset where you stay balanced. And one of the things that really helps that is understanding what your values are and what your purpose is and what your vision is, because then you've got something to compare everyday events and how you react to them to. If you don't have that connection, like I didn't for many, many years, which is why I love coaching now, you kind of don't have a filter to look through that's going to help you understand whether this thing is serving you or not.
Fantastic, man. Thank you. And it's true. I had this experience actually with someone I'm coaching at the minute. As you talk about that balance and kind of like homeostasis, where everything went kind of the way that she wanted it to go at the start of the week. It was fantastic. Business was growing, sales, and then boom, just had a really, really low. Felt a real sense of anxiety and overwhelm, and we kind of chatted about it. And it was the same approach where I was trying to get her to normalize it. So like when you're getting the sales, when business is increasing, when it's going the same way, normalize it and accept it and know that that's the way it should be going, or that you deserve it, internalize it, so that you're not getting the big spikes and you're not getting the peaks and in the troughs, basically. And it was trying to get that point across too, to just keep that balance, like just go with the flow, keep that balance, instead for every up, there's always a down. So for every positive, there's always a negative. Again, it's on it. But it's whenever
you get too above your station, life will give you a bit of a slap.
Yeah.
So I've seen this a lot over the years. With if you think of there's different areas of life, mental life and family life and spiritual life and physical life and financial life and social impact and leadership life. And I've worked with people who have had on the face of it, really good deals. They've earned millions, right? And they've been buzzing about this. So that's in their perception, because business and money is the highest value. They're elated up here, but then they get home and their wife says, "I'm leaving you." So that's where the balance can also come in. There's always a counterbalance bringing you back into equilibrium. So that also points to the fact that if you're not looking to maintain and empower yourself in all areas of life, you'll be disempowered by an area of life.
Yeah.
And that's also something I think a lot of people miss. They kind of chase the success and they forget that actually, if they don't nurture their relationship at home, man or woman, right? That success could mean nothing actually, because you can lose your unit, you can lose half your estate, those sort of things. So I think it's really important to kind of slow down, look at the person's whole life, and make sure you dedicate effort to empower yourself in those areas. Otherwise, life will give you a bit of a bump, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Two questions, David. I suppose the first one is, what have you learned most from being coached yourself? Was there like maybe a specific or a poignant moment in when you just started out being coached that helped create clarity or shift in who you are and what your values are? And then what do you feel that you've learned most from being a coach and coaching other people?
So the thing that sticks out is that I was a perennial victim. Something you also mentioned in your TED talk, right? So I would always be looking outside of myself and blaming situations, people, circumstances, parenting as to why things hadn't worked out how I thought they would in the story of my mind, the fantasy that I was running, right? So it was always very much externally directed. And I worked with a brilliant coach called Joseph. And he said to me once, so you sound like you don't have a choice. And it was one of those moments where I was like, you've got me there. And I started to go back to, well, you don't understand. And suddenly, as I was spilling this bullshit out, I realized he just absolutely nailed it. And we worked on the fact that actually, well, where do you have a choice in life? And taking back ownership of your own life by realizing everything that happens to you is actually down to some action you've taken or you haven't taken, and that choice is right. So that's a big thing. A great starter for someone who's maybe new to coaching is understand that actually there's always a choice that you can have. Be the master of your own destiny, or be a victim, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing, when it comes to coaching other people, the question was, what's the biggest thing I've learned being a coach?
Yeah, what do you think that you've learned most, again, probably about yourself being a coach or from the people that you're coaching?
There's always a next level. So especially in the profession of coaching, one of the reasons I love coaching so much is because as a coach, if you're not dedicated and committed to your own personal growth and development, you're going down and going backwards. So I love the fact there's a healthy accountability there on you as a person, or on me as a person, to keep seeking out great teachers, great coaches, and becoming more and more awake and enlightened and aware. And that allows me to serve my own life, right, and the lives of my wife and my children, and also the lives of my clients. So that's one of the things I didn't actually realize was even there when I first started out. But I love that, and it has a healthy amount of tension to it.
Yeah.
So, and I love that. People who are listening to this and yourself, they've all got a growth mindset, and there's always a next level. So.
Yeah, 100%. And I love it as well too, in terms of just further education and trying to improve myself as a coach. It's something that I made a commitment to years ago, that I would dedicate myself to always learning and always trying to upskill and always trying to be, because I'm always at a stage in my mind where I know that there's so many more different levels, but it's like you're just starting out. It's like I always have that part where I'm kind of just starting out. I need to know more. I want to learn more. Not to say that I don't value and have belief in what I do, but I'm still at that stage in my mind where I'm always like a student, and I want to just keep learning. I want to keep learning. Yeah.
Yeah. The beginner's mind. Love it.
100%. Okay, David, for people who are interested in your coaching and want to touch base with you, maybe get in touch with you and learn some more, where's the best place to get you?
The best place is really my website. So it's davidfoster.coach. And on there's some blogs and articles and resources. You can also download the first 5 chapters for free of my book, which is called Where's Dad? And I'm on Facebook. If you want to just hook up me personally on Facebook, David Foster, that's also a good place to hang out. Or you can email me at hello@davidfoster.coach. But the website is the main place.
Yeah. And guys, just on that again, before we finish off, the book, Where's Dad? Connect with yourself and your family before it's too late, is a fantastic read. I've only got a couple of chapters left, and I actually just started it, I think 3 days ago. And I mean that not just like blowing smoke. It is a fantastic read. There's so many things in it that I've resonated with as a father, as a business owner, and as a coach, and learned a lot of things. It just makes you kind of reconnect again and wake up again and go, right, you know what, right, I could do this, and I need to maybe put this in place again. And you're kind of learning from the pitfalls that went on throughout that book. So I highly recommend getting the book, Where's Dad? And if you send me the link, what I'll do is I'll put the link in the show notes as well too, for people to go and get it there.
That's really, really kind. And thank you once again for having me on. I think you did a brilliant job with your podcast on your coaching and all the difference you're making in your book and your TED Talk. So it's a real honor to be here with you, and I appreciate you for doing it.
Fantastic, man. I loved speaking. Cheers, David. Speak soon.